Run in the morning or the evening, by heart rate or pace, fast or slow, cross-training or add more runs. As runners, we're presented with tough choices all of the time, and while there's no definitive right or wrong, some options are definitely better than others. So I'm going to use our weekly training as an example, and I'm going to present the case on both sides of what we think are the toughest choices we've had to make down the years in our training. And then I'm going to pick a winner, and you might not agree. And that's okay, because it is opinion. And you can share yours in the comments, but play nice. And why don't we start with one of the biggest and toughest choices I think that we have to make as runners, and that's whether you train in the morning or whether you train in the evening.
Bye. Ben's decided to use me as a guinea pig for this one because I've got a double run day. And I'm talking about whether morning or evening runs are better. Let's talk about the morning as I'm out here at 6:30. It can be beautiful. I haven't got the sunrise today that looks special, but quite often being out before the world wakes up, when everything's peaceful and quiet, you might catch a lovely sunrise. It can be a really special, really beautiful time of the day to be running. It's also such a huge win to get your training done early. Get your run in before the rest of your day started. It feels amazing. Morning runs can be your savior if you've got a busy life, maybe a busy working or family life, and sometimes it's the only time you can get your run in. The next one is quite individual, but I personally find I'm more energized in the morning, more focused, more fresh. Sometimes when it gets to like 5 or 6 p.m, I feel really fatigued, and it's quite hard to get the vim and the vigor to really give it all in your run. So I feel fresher. I know that won't be the same for everyone, but that works for me. Okay, I need to touch on a big problem with morning runs, and that is getting fuel before your run so you're not running fasted, which can be really challenging if you're getting out super early. And we're done. Just hit 6k. The main aim today is recovery for my run later, but now I'll start with a walk.
And a swim. It's windy.
Out for my second run of the day. It's beautiful, and a good point of this is I'm fueled and I'm ready. So I've eaten well today, I've got good energy stores in, and that can be a huge benefit. Also, my body's nicely warmed up now. This morning I was stiff as trying to get down the stairs and get out for my run, but now I'm feeling loose and good. I'm ready to move. I used to love running in the evenings after a hard day at work. It can be a great way to blow off any steam from the day, process your thoughts, and just get a bit of time for yourself and your mind to decompress. And on the flip side, if you've had a tough day or a long day, it can be really hard to get the energy to go out later in the day. So it's not straightforward. Let's see what Ben thinks.
So this one's definitely going to divide opinion. I know that. In fact, Mary and I disagree to a certain extent on which one's right. Mary preferring one and I'm preferring the other. But ultimately, if you give me all of the options, if I had a choice, I'm going to pick a part of the day where I feel warmed up, where I'm definitely not going to be fasted. And let's be real, as you get older, when things aren't as achy or stiff. So as the winner of the first one, I'm going to give it to afternoon and evening training. I just feel like I'm safer doing that. But you can disagree in the comments. But again, remember, it's an opinion. Next up, and yeah, another pretty divisive topic, is whether you should do the majority of your training fasted, as in without fuel, or fueled, as in with fuel. Fueled first, and if you know me and if you know the channel, then you'll know I'm extremely biased, but I'm gonna give you the points anyway. So first of all, the evidence overwhelmingly supports fueling your training. Like, I 100% would not want to go out on anything but an easy run without any fuel. So what are we looking at? Think about it. When we want to train, we want high quality in all of our sessions. And we know, or I know, that the road to high quality is making sure that we're fueled, not just beforehand actually, but during. The downside to all of it obviously being that you have to really time your breakfasts or your meals, because you can't just, or I certainly can't just
eat and then go out and running. So you have to have a plan in place to eat in enough time before you exercise, and that's the hard bit. But ultimately, you're not gonna get any long run, you're not gonna get any lactate threshold quality session done if you're doing it fasted. It's just not how the body works, it's not what the evidence supports. We're essentially priming the engine. But what about fasted? Yeah, I really don't have a bunch of props to represent training fasted other than this empty bowl, but the theory behind training fasted is that you go out in the mornings with no fuel in your body and you train your body to better utilize the fats as your energy source rather than the carbohydrates, because you haven't put carbohydrates in. But this, trust me, is a narrow window, because the runs have to be easy. They should really be less than an hour. Otherwise, you're gonna need fuel. You're gonna need fuel for a number of reasons: to avoid injury, stop technique breaking down, avoid bonking. That's the worst if you've ever run out of energy. And you do not want to be doing any punchy session, threshold, tempo, long run without fuel in your body. Trust me. The science is very clear on this, that whilst fasted running can train your body to utilize fats better as a fuel source, but actually that does not translate into any improvement in performance. And if you know anything about utilization of fats and the process that you have to go through to use fats as energies, you'll know it's a very costly process in terms of oxygen. So your heart rate is going to go up anyway. It shouldn't surprise you to know that I think this is about as one-sided as Anthony Joshua versus Jake Paul. Especially when there are now, like, there's carb drink mixes. You don't even have to necessarily have a full breakfast. We have a carb drink mix before a long run and banana. The thing is, fasted training is such a narrow window. I'm just not sure if it's worth it.
This one is more clear cut. Let's be completely honest. Even the evidence is overwhelming. So I'm going to give the winner to training fueled. And that's because although you can train to use fat more when you're exercising, it doesn't actually translate into a better performance. And for me, ultimately, that's the key here. Being fueled keeps the quality high and enables better repair. Simple as that, no brainer. Up next is a decision between road or trail for your training. And this one I think is a little trickier. Let's talk about road first. It's where the majority of marathon runners spend the majority of their time, or is it? Well, first of all, road is easily accessible. Pretty much for all of us, I would say, we can go out of our house, and whilst some have access to trail, almost all of us have access to road. So it wins the accessibility battle. And if you're racing a road marathon, then of course it's more specific. And on the road, I'd argue that there is less chance of a traumatic injury. And there's a difference between overuse and traumatic, in that traumatic is things like slipping over roots, slipping on mud, falling down a hill. That's traumatic, as in a one-off. But then if we flip it to trail, you are very, first of all, lucky if it's on your doorstep. Like when we lived in the UK, super lucky. We had trail all around us, and we didn't take that for granted. One of the massive positives of trail is there is certainly less chance of an overuse injury, because you're using different muscles in different ways, going up, down, jogging, sometimes walking. It's kinder on the joints because grass and mud is not as impactful as running on the road. And one thing I would say about the trail is that it's amazing to improve the joy of your experience. Some of the best moments I've ever had in running have been on the trail by a mile. But when all's said and done, we've got to pick a winner. And in this one, I'm going to go with where I think convenience is the most important factor. I would suggest that if you live in urban areas, if you live in cities, your access to trail is going to be a lot harder. It could be a drive away. It could be completely inaccessible. Some people don't have cars to get to the trail. And for that reason, I think overall, as great as trails are and as much as I love them, I think roads have to win because they're pretty much accessible to all of us. We can all train on them. And so winner, roads. But I love trail. Oh, this is a good one. Okay, should you be running faster or should you be running slower? What's best for your training?
Oh, here goes nothing. So this is my second run back after injury. This is the first time I'm going to attempt 10 kilometers without stopping, see where my calf is at so that I can jump into Tokyo training properly. And it felt like a pretty appropriate time to talk about the benefits and the drawbacks of running slow, which is what I'm about to do.
Well, let's start with the obvious on this one. Running slow is just easier. I don't have to think about any interval reps. I don't have to push myself necessarily very high out of my comfort zone. I can do this and it feels okay.
Also, theoretically, this is the type of pace I could just run for quite a long time. I mean, we're talking over a marathon distance at this pace. Another tick in the box for slow in my opinion. But let's be really brutally honest about the downsides of running slow is that you really find it hard to know how far and how quickly you're progressing, because if you never run fast and you're training for a 5, 10, half marathon, even a marathon, and you've never run anywhere near that goal pace, then it can be quite frustrating not knowing. It's like a real faith in the process type of training method. And let's be honest, should we be totally honest about this? Lots of long, slow, easy miles. It can just be a bit boring, especially on there, and it is a downside. There are ways of making it interesting, but there's nothing quite like a faster session. Full disclosure right now, we were driving to the track and I was going to make a point about running fast, and then traffic, as happens in Phuket, got really bad and it's going to take about an hour and a half. So we've stopped off at this beautiful dam here. Mary's gone off to do her speed session, but I can still make the same points. I'll just whack some B-roll on top. So for me, running faster is amazing for a number of reasons, and the first thing is it makes your marathon pace feel slower. You're training your body at threshold so that you can run below threshold in the marathon and it feel comfortable. And you know what? It also makes you feel like a rock star. I'm not going to say it doesn't. There is something quite magical about running around a track at fast paces, feeling super good. But here's the problem. It is aggressive on the body. If you are prone to injury or if it's your first time through, your body might react in strange ways and you might even get knocked out of your consistency. And if you're not doing it right, it quite quickly becomes not a threshold session and maybe a VO2 max session, which is even more aggressive. So you really have to know what you're doing if you're at the very top end of running faster, like threshold work. I mean, ultimately, I absolutely love faster sessions. I love running faster, but there is a balance, there is a payoff. Which one is better?
Ultimately, we all know you need both in your training. I'm not trying to say that you don't need one or the other. You have to have a balance of running faster than your paces, and you have to have a balance of running slow. But I have to pick. That's the whole point of this video. If I had to select one that was more important than the other when it comes to marathon training, then what I'm going to do is this simple logical argument. Could I get to a marathon start line just training fast, but not perhaps slow and doing long runs, for example, or doing fast long runs? I don't think I could. Can I get to the start line of a marathon just training slow, just training in my base zones? I'm not saying I'm going to be in my best possible shape, but can I get there? Yeah, I can. And in fact, most first-time marathoners, it's the way that I would recommend training. So as a result, if you give me a choice and I have to train fast or slow, the winner is slow. This will be an interesting one to pick apart. Should you train with a full structure or should you train free and easy? Because it might not be as clear-cut as you think it is. Let's deal with structure first. What structure is able to do for you in any training cycle, whether you're training from 5K up to marathon, is it can keep you focused, it can keep you building specific and gradual, and it can keep you safe. That's the whole purpose of periodizing your training, is to every block a purpose and overall the cycle a purpose. But it can also feel restrictive, and what we actually don't want in our long term of our running is resenting having to go out and run. But the great thing about having structure is I would say you can focus on different things. Even now I'm training people for a marathon later on in 2026. So what we're doing beforehand is we're working with some of the athletes Can they gain a little bit more volume across a few more days so that we can build on top of that when we come into the marathon cycle? And for some, they want to get faster over 10k and half marathon first, so we're looking at speed VO2 max style sessions before they start their marathon training cycle. So it can be very structured and you can have a bigger picture. But then let's talk about free, because one of the finest runners that exists on the planet today, Courtney Dauwalter, has no structure. She goes out and she runs as and when she feels, as far or as short as she feels. So it's a very joyful process, that's what I would say. But I would also argue you probably need to know what you're doing in order to make the most out of that process. And I'm sure Courtney knows very well what she's doing. And one thing I've always found with training free and easy, once maybe I've come to the end of my marathon block and I want to have a little bit of a rest, is I enjoy it when I start to do it, and then over time I miss that structure, I miss that purposeful training towards another goal. So there are pros and cons, of course, that's the whole point of the video, but there has to be a winner. And for me, if you want to be purposeful, if you want to be safe, and if you want to get to your goals in the best possible condition, then the winner has to be structured training. This is the one I get asked the most, especially when I take on runners that have been training with an app like Runner or Cooper, and that's the difference between training with heart rate and training with pace.
Okay, time for my marathon pace practice session on the treadmill. I'm really nervous. Whose idea was it to train for a sub-3 marathon? Because I'm in the second half of my Tokyo Marathon training cycle, this session is about pace, so I'm diving in to marathon pace for intervals. In the first half of the block, I was doing all of this kind of stuff by heart rate only.
So generally the way our marathon training cycles work, as Mary just explained, is you have to be conditioned enough using heart rate to be able to train at pace later on. So while Mary's actually at marathon pace right now, why I think it's important to train by heart rate more often than not is because that means you're training where you're at, not where you want to be. You're not getting it wrong. And a great example of this is in our threshold sessions, we train at heart rate, because at the start of a training cycle, we know where Mary's threshold is heart rate wise, right? But if we said run this pace, that might not be where she's at right now. So heart rate is a very pure metric of knowing what's going on inside at that moment. Whereas pace can be demotivating, because if I said to Mary go and run this or that pace in a lactate threshold session and she couldn't hit it like she could in her last training block, that can be quite upsetting. It can people get anxiety around that. If I say to her go and hit this heart rate, it won't matter what pace she's running. I think of the two metrics, pace can be wrong more easily than heart rate when you're training and when you're racing. Heart rate is such a good indicator of what's going on inside at that moment. I suppose ultimately what Mary's trying to do right here is blend the heart rate, the pace and the feel together so that on race day they can work in tandem and not individual. That's the ultimate goal, that you can use all these metrics and then just rely on feel. But I'm putting myself out on the line in this video and I'm picking one or the other.
Okay, I'm likely to wind some people up, but again, share your opinions in the comments, and they are just opinions. But for me, pace can be ultimately demotivating more than it can be motivating through a training cycle, because often you're not training where you're at, you're training where you want to be. If we tell her to hit a heart rate or a heart rate area, band, zone, whatever you want to call it, then suddenly it doesn't matter about the pace anymore. She knows that she's training where she's at right now, and the pace will ultimately find her down the process. And that is why, for me, hands down, because it's what's going on internally at any given moment, the winner of heart rate versus pace has to be training at heart rate. All right, why have two words and not realize that they're potentially different things? Strength versus conditioning. So let's start with strength. How I see strength, and this is my personal interpretation, is either work in the gym with weights, and it could be heavy weights, it could be light weights, it could be resistance bands, it could be home workouts with weights or body weight. But these are strength exercises that are designed to make your body stronger and more robust. And with strength gains come running efficiency gains. You know, you're able to push forwards more off of the ground on every foot stroke, and your body can absorb more impact on the landing because you are stronger. But one thing I would say about strength work that I've seen time and time again is if you don't know what you're doing, it is potentially harmful. Just going to the gym and playing around with weights when you don't know if your technique is good enough, or particularly what are the best exercises, are actually a fast route to injury rather than strength gains. So it is a bit of a dodgy territory. And it's also, for me, I find it a little bit harder to get motivated. Running's a thing we like to do, right? Conditioning, however, now that's more about working on our flexibility, working on our mobility, foam rolling, using the massage gun. For me, I have a little mobility routine that Mary and I do every day, and it absolutely changed the game for me in the Chicago training block. And the aim for conditioning for me is improve things like my pliability, flexibility, range of movement, the amount of movement I have at the hip or the knees or the ankle that is going to allow me to avoid injury in the long term. And it's safer. It's not heavy weights. It's something that I can do watching the television for 10-15 minutes a day. But strength and conditioning, for me, the winner overall has to be a draw. I cannot separate these ones. I'm really sorry. You have to do both within your training if you want to get the best out of your training. You can't just get rid of strength for mobility, and likewise, you can't neglect mobility for just strength. There has to be an element of both. I refuse to pick a winner on this one. And finally, this one's really relevant to Mary and I. What's better, cross training or adding more mileage running to your training?
This is probably where Mary and I differ the most, is our ability to focus on adding more runs or cross training. And we come at it from two different angles, but I'm going to approach the cross training angle and argue the case there. So no matter what I do, strength and conditioning, running, taking it easy, I've tried all methods and my body just finds it a lot harder to add running volume, and Mary's doesn't. So the way that I get by is I cross train. I bike, I swim, I go on the elliptical trainer. I try everything to make sure that I'm staying fit without putting too much stress through my body. So I can still build my cardiovascular base. I can reduce the load on my limbs. And actually this is the perfect way to train if you don't like a lot of running anyway, or if you're a triathlete, or if you get injured. Since I've been injured, I've been doing 5 bikes a week of 40 kilometers, 5 swims a week of 1 kilometer each, and I feel pretty much as fit as I would have done if I'd have been running. So for me, cross training is absolutely the way forward to get me to start lines uninjured. But is it the best way if I had the option?
Increasing my number of running days has been part of my strategy to get better and stronger as a runner over the last few years. Ben on the way home from his swim, having a good old sing-along. Things we love to see. If you follow the channel for a while, you'll know that when I started marathon training, I used to run 3 times a week, and then pretty much each year I added a 4th day. Maybe for 2 years I added double days, I added a 5th day, and now I'm running 6 days a week. Does the strategy work? Absolutely yes, if you get it right. And I'm proof of that. I've taken off between 9 and 12 minutes off my marathon time year on year for the past 3 or 4 years. So it does work, but there are risks. I'm sure the risks are pretty obvious to you. Overuse injuries can come if you take any sudden increase in mileage or load on the body, like days running. So you've got to be careful. You've got to do it really gradually, 1 step at a time. And everybody's unique as well. Like Ben just can't run as many days as me. His body doesn't react so well, so he has other alternatives. If you can safely increase your days running, then you could be onto a winner.
Ooh, that is really tough, because ultimately we train in 2 separate ways and they work for us. But if I was given the choice, if you asked me and I wasn't going to get injured and I could choose the way that I was going to train for any race, not marathon, half marathon, 5K, doesn't matter, I probably am going to add more volume. It's what I wish that I could do and it's what I'm working towards. So I think winner has to be running more. Now run to the comments, let me know what you think. Make your points constructive, make them funny. I don't care. I'm going to have a look in there and see what you think. And if you like this video, you are definitely liking this one, which was the things that I wish that I knew about marathon training when I started, but I didn't. And people should tell us. So you're definitely going to get value here. You need to subscribe to the channel if you want to follow the journey and learn more. And we're racing this weekend. How exciting. So see you on Wednesday for a race video.